Thank you.
Well, we'll give everybody's computers here just a moment to load them all on.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh,
Hi, everyone.
Nice to see everybody here.
we got a lot more coming in, it looks like still, so we'll let folks trickle in here for just a minute. Quite the turnout.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Oops.
Alex is chasing Hoppy.
Mhm.
She got our gloves and hats and pretty much the backcountry. This is why we spent most of the day in the backcountry, because she lives there. It's so natural. We go with the flow. Here at home, we are constantly chasing her to get our gloves, everything. But this is a good thing because we spent more time in the backcountry.
Hey, whatever gets you out there, right?
Yes, whatever gets you out there. Yes. Oh, Tasha is here. Tasha Thomas from Sierra Avalanche Center. She's another of our amazing avalanche educators.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hey, Tasha. Tasha works for Sierra Avalanche Center and she teaches motorized classes. And she's one of our. Thank you. We have Lexi with us, one of our members. Thank you, everybody.
Example, you can't open.
Okay.
Please close my door.
Want to be on, well, we don't want to be on video, right?
I don't really care. It's fine. Yeah, because just because he's that's your gonna tell you right there.
Right there.
Yeah. It's on me.
Yes. Hi, everybody. Alex is here next to me. He's just puppy watching. We will switch.
I'm sorry about it.
Hi, everybody. It's Diane. I'm almost home, so I don't have my video on, but it's great to be here. Good to see you, friends of Alex and Natalia. It's Diane.
Diane is
there.
another magical member of our foundation and long-time friend. And we have so many magical
And now
friends.
with backcountry skier,
And another backcountry skier.
telemark skier.
Oh, thank you so much. And so many of our kids, Lexi and Tyler, we have magical kids and friends, most coming with the foundation.
Hey, Tasha.
Drew is here.
Hi, Alex. How are you?
Doing well. How are you been? Have you been going out?
Epic. We're getting, yeah, we're getting more snow. So I'm probably going to snowmobile like the next 5 days in a row.
Oh, yeah, almost until the middle of next week.
Oh, so nice to see
We'll
all
take
of
it.
you. And Drew, our kid who used to be here and he did his school project in the name, senior school project in the name of our son. And now he lives in Montana, where it's Karl Birkeland, and he rides the backcountry there.
I don't
Oh,
care.
nice
Good to see
everyone.
you all.
Oh, so nice to see so many magical faces. of friends.
How do I get it to start? That's what I got.
Let me see your phone.
It's really special to have so many screens and to know so many people.
Well, we got 5 after here. We got a few more people coming in, but what does everybody feel about kicking this whole thing off? Sound good? All right. Well, welcome everybody, and thank you so much for joining us for the 2nd annual Avalanche Safety Roundtable brought to you by the Nickolay Dodov Foundation. My name is Casey Glaubman, and I work for the Friends of the Mount Shasta Avalanche Center, and I am a proud Avalanche educator for the Nickolay Dodov Foundation. So, as of now, I think we'll go around the metaphorical table here and meet our presenters for the evening. We, of course, have our wonderful hosts. We've got Natalia and Alex. As I'm sure many of you know,
Hi, everybody.
There we go. The founders and directors of the, oh, sorry, guys.
Natalia, do you want to say something?
We just want to say thank you so much. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts to all of you, our amazing Avalanche educators, and it means the world.
You puppies need to get off.
Meaningful message to all of you. We lost our son Nick 11 years ago in
All right,
Alaska.
make this big again.
It's really keep us going. We are very thankful and thankful to be a small part of big meaningful message. Thank you to all of you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you for joining us for this kind of a workshop. We have really interesting topics to talk about. I'm sure you'll be interested to learn more about it. Education never stops, so anything that brings to the table more knowledge, it's good for all of us. So tied ups, tune up, and let's enjoy the nice conversation and learn more about avalanche safety.
From very amazing speakers, the crew of speakers we have here tonight, it's really, really amazing. We are very thankful.
And joining us from the far northwest up there, we've got Dallas Glass, an avalanche specialist and the deputy director of the Northwest Avalanche Center. Dallas has been working with snow and avalanche education since 2006 when he started as a professional observer. He now works with NWAC's education, mountain weather forecasting, and continues to write forecasts when he is not shredding apparently 3 feet of cold smoke powder. He got his start in hydrology at the University of Nevada, decided he liked the frozen kind better, and well, we know where he ended up now.
Thanks, Casey. Super happy to be here tonight. Yeah, I had a really good ski day, so this grin on my face is just going to be here all night.
Awesome. And if we had a table, he might be sitting on the other side of it. And we've got a senior avalanche scientist from the National Avalanche Center, the one and only Karl Birkeland. Karl has published tons of papers on avalanche safety and snow science, has earned an MS and a PhD. That's a real thing in the field of avalanche science. Before he founded the Gallatin National Forest Avalanche Center. Oh, and also co-founded the National Avalanche Center. So maybe knows a thing or two about avalanches.
Or at least I just pretend pretty well. Thanks, Casey. Appreciate it. And yeah, it's a real pleasure to be here and an honor to be part of this group presenting for the Nick Dodov Foundation. So thanks.
And last but certainly not least, just a stone's throw across town from me here in Mount Shasta, we have the director of the Mount Shasta Avalanche Center and sauna maker extraordinaire, Nick Meyers. Nick started his avalanche career with a Forest Service internship just over 20 years ago now, while attending Feather River College and then Western State College out in Colorado. Fun fact, I recently got to see his house out there. He oversees the Shasta Avalanche Center in the winter and the Climbing Ranger program here in the summer. And as if that weren't enough, he has graced the cover of Popular Mechanics magazine, proving once and for all that avalanche nerds really are the real supermodels, as we all knew.
Right on. Thanks, you guys. Happy to be here, team. Stoked everyone tonight and look forward to the conversation.
Right on. So those are our esteemed panelists and hosts for the evening. Now, there's a lot of people in here and probably a lot of questions as well. So feel free if you want to just drop them in the chat. We'll make sure to get to them as we go. We're going to do this a bit kind of freewheeling, whatever topics interest folks. If you have specific questions for one of the presenters or specific Avalanche questions, we are more than happy to take any and all questions tonight. Now, with that being said, I believe we're going to kick things off with a discussion of some of the red flags and potential hazards that you might see out there on any given day.
Well, I can start, I guess. Yeah, so just quick note, if you guys are not on mute, if you wouldn't mind muting your devices, that'd be awesome. So yeah, tonight we're just going to start things off by starting to talk about the 5 red flags of avalanche danger. And whether you're new to avalanches or just a refresher, you know, hopefully you'll get something out of the discussion tonight. And so you hear about these 5 red flags of avalanche danger. If you read avalanche forecasts at all, any of the centers, you probably hear them say, keep an eye out for the 5 red flags of avalanche danger. Well, we want to discuss what are they, what should you do about them, show you a few examples of these red flags. And what I think is pretty cool about the red flags is they're not specific to a certain area. These red flags are true anywhere in the world, anywhere in the mountains where you have snow on the ground, and where avalanches are possible. These red flags hold true. So, yeah.
You know, Nick, I'm totally with you. I actually kind of did a little cursory look at some of our accidents here in the Northwest, and it's amazing that we can pick these things up in nearly all of them. And that oftentimes what we find is that people saw these things and noted them, but didn't choose to respond to them. So they see these red flags, it registers, they may even mention it and discuss it in their groups, but it didn't necessarily alter their behavior. Not every time, but many of our accidents definitely fall into that category up here. And so I think that's kind of why, you know, even for me, I frequently fall back and like, you know, it's so easy to try to outsmart the snow. And really, that's just not a good move when we've got something as simple as a tool as this that we can utilize. You want to kick off with some photos for one of them?
Sure. So yeah, we've got red flags, and I suppose we'll just start with the most obvious one here. And you guys, this is Mother Nature's neon flashing sign that other avalanches are possible. And you're probably already thinking it, but recent avalanches is probably the first one you'll read about and see often in the list. It's the most obvious, and it should not be ignored. And so I'm going to do a quick screen share here. This slide, hang tight. So this slide here, you see it? Okay, see that?
Yeah, it's coming through, Nick.
Cool, right on. So this was a slide up on Mount Shasta earlier this season, and to be quite honest, it caught us a bit by surprise. We had several days of wind. We're going to get to wind here in a second. I'm already given a red flag away, but at any rate, we had some periods, a period of wind. And, you know, a lot of times on Mount Shasta, when we get heavy wind over, you know, multiple days, it will just scour the mountain and literally blow all the snow away, and we won't see much avalanche activity. However, for whatever reason, the wind direction or we don't know, you know, forecasting avalanches is a very inexact science. And this thing popped up, it was a natural avalanche. And so pretty obvious clue of potential avalanche danger. If you see a recent avalanche, that means that other avalanches are possible. You most definitely want to take note about, or, you know, just put in your brain bin, what elevation was it at? What aspect was it on? How big was it? Maybe what layer did it fail on? And you probably I should say most definitely should not be skiing slopes similar to what you saw that recent avalanche on. Anything else to add about that, guys?
You know, it was kind of funny, Nick. We had an avalanche warning out on Monday here, which, you know, avalanche warning, we're thinking very dangerous avalanche conditions with, you know, natural avalanches likely to occur, right? And so I bumped into this level 1 class that was out there touring in the field, and they're like, I was like, what observations do you think I'm going to go make today? And they're like, oh, you'll probably dig a snow pit. And I was like, nope. And they're like, I could probably jump on some test slopes. And I was like, nope. You know what I want to know today? I want to know if there are avalanches out there, because it's just such a clear fire sign. Like, why do I need to go get, again, or try to overthink it? Like, if there are avalanches out there, that's all I need to know. That tells me way more than a snow profile ever could.
Totally.
That's what I went out and took photos of, and what I went out looking for the day. And it was kind of funny to see this level 1 class be like, oh yeah, like we don't have to make this more complicated than it needs to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, another just note is, you know, this assessment looking for recent avalanches, it can start as soon as you start getting into the mountains. You know, you're looking up at the hills, you're looking at little road cuts along the road up to the trailhead. You can often see crown lines like this from afar. This photo, the mountain photo, you know, you can see that from town. So you don't necessarily have to even have your skis on your feet before you're you know, making that assessment and feeling out the danger. You read the forecast, you're looking for these red flags. So by the time you even put your skis on, you should have a fairly good idea of what type of terrain you might be traveling in for the day.
One quick note here. Looks like we've got a question from Brett. Brett, if you want to unmute real quick and feel free to ask, or type it in the chat. Going once. Well, we'll see if that gets sorted out.
Yeah,
Well,
so
but
one of the other red flags kind of falling in that vein, like we have avalanche observations, like Nick said, that's Mother Nature like screaming at us, right? But we kind of have what I'll refer to as non-avalanche avalanche observations. So this is that unstable snowpack failing, oftentimes under us, the trigger, and we're just not getting an avalanche, but we're still getting a really clear sign. And that clear sign is oftentimes a big crack shooting across the snow. And just a second as I pull up our shooting cracks here. So what we're seeing here is just like, man, somebody stepped, they rode their sled, they were snowshoeing, and these cracks shot away. And we're not talking inches, we're talking feet, oftentimes tens of feet. In the case of some of these, you know, they're like 20 and 30 feet long. And we step on these slopes and these cracks shoot away. And why don't we have avalanches in these photos? If you can use the chat, that'd be a great way to even respond to that question. Why don't we have avalanches in any of these photos? Yeah, well, we got it. They're just too low angle, right? So oftentimes we can get shooting cracks even in relatively flat terrain. And again, it's just the unstable snowpack failing under me, the trigger, and it's giving us an opportunity to kind of see like, whoa, this thing is pretty a hair trigger right now. And I don't want to be on those steeper open slopes, because if I was, this would just be followed by an avalanche. Similarly, I even shot a video the other day and I said, well, there goes a big shooting crack. And then I was like, oh, and there goes the avalanche. It was just in such slow motion that I actually got to witness the shooting crack shoot out before the entire slope release. So shooting cracks are another one of those really clear red flag signs. Hey, whoa, pay attention. You got unstable snow. What's the aspect? What's the elevation? This is a time to immediately dial it back and try to stay out of similar types of terrain. Now, Karl or Nick, if you have anything you want to add on shooting cracks, I've got a bunch of photos of them here, though, because they're just really fun to take pictures of.
Yeah, I just think that a lot of times your shooting cracks are also accompanied by a whoomph sound. So that's the snowpack actually fracturing, the weak layer fracturing underneath your foot, underneath your feet or your snow machine. You'll get that whoomph sort of sound with a shooting crack. And those two things, like you said, I mean, the most important thing to observe are avalanches. I mean, I've been to avalanche accidents where people have actually traveled over avalanche debris to the slope where they triggered the avalanche and someone died. And then the second most important are these really obvious signs of instability, like shooting cracks and whumps.
Maybe one go back here, if you guys don't mind. There was a good question from Jennifer that just asked if there was a handy way to tell if an avalanche is recent. Which I think is a good question because, you know, at least in our snow climate, our avalanche danger is very temporal. You know, it spikes during storms and then usually subsides fairly quickly. And then yet you still see these crowns out there. So 3 or 4 days later, I see a crown, but maybe it's not that, maybe it's not unstable. So any tips or tricks from you guys to be able to tell if avalanche is recent?
Sometimes it's challenging. You know, I mean, sometimes when you look up an avalanche, everything just looks super sharp, especially if, you know, say the wind's been blowing and continuing to blow. What'll tend to happen is that front face at the top, we call it the crown face, that'll start to get drifted in by snow blowing. But if everything just looks really crisp and fresh, that's usually when you know that it's a very recent avalanche. Of course, you know, an avalanche could have happened just a couple hours ago, and if the wind's blowing, it'll actually start to be filling in already a couple hours later. So it's difficult to see how recent it is. But just in general, if you see avalanche activity, you know that things are, if they aren't really unstable right now, you know that they've been really unstable in the recent past, and it's definitely a heads up time.
And a question here from somebody else. The shooting cracks, are those limited by slope angle or typically associated with 30 degrees and steeper?
Yeah, that's kind of one of the nice parts there, Jeff, about those shooting cracks is we can see them even on low angle terrain. Like Karl mentioned, that audible whump or that visual shooting crack, that snowpack failing under us, the trigger, those things can happen even in relatively flat meadows. We don't need a steep slope. And that's really the beauty of it is if I'm seeing that and I'm not in avalanche terrain, then you better bet I'm not going anywhere near avalanche terrain when I start to see those kind of signs, because that is kind of like I mentioned, the non-avalanche avalanche observation. Basically, the snowpack is failing under me, the trigger. That tells me if I tip this slope up, I'm going to get an avalanche. And I don't want to be anywhere near these things. So kind of one of the beauties of those shooting cracks.
And I think that's go ahead, Nick.
I was just, you know, it brings up the thought of the idea of test slopes. You might hear about test slopes a lot. What is a test slope? And, you know, the short of it is it's a small slope of non-consequence where you're just getting a feel for the avalanche danger. Is there a slab on top of a weak layer? And that's where those kind of shooting cracks can happen. And you might get a small slab. And again, just like Dal said, that's your cue. Like, okay, we've got a slab. It's easily triggerable on this small test slope. Definitely not going to step into steeper terrain today. And, you know, it's an old adage that goes, you know, when the snowpack is in question, terrain is the answer. Terrain is one of the most important skills you can have when getting into the, you know, skiing and traveling in the backcountry is, you know, recognizing avalanche terrain.
I actually got a little video if you want it for the test slope real quick. I just pulled it up. This is just shot this past weekend up here in our mountains. And let's see if it'll play like we want it to here. Can y'all hear it?
The Northwest Avalanche.
Yeah.
Saturday, February 18th. We're here at the top of Cape Ridge today. We're out searching some of those wind swabs and found a great little test swope here. We've got some snow, wind feature there, some types of surfaces. Only at the time here, this small little 30 foot slope you can run out is pretty heavily wind loaded. And we're going to walk out on it and see if we can get it to crack, maybe even avalanche first. There's a big shooting crack, and there goes that avalanche. These little test slips are great ways to get information about the avalanche problem. Use them carefully. Make sure you have a nice, clean run. Stay safe out there.
That was awesome.
That's perfect.
Yeah, test slips are a big part of my observation days when I'm out working for the Avalanche Center. They're also a big part of my recreational days, because those nice smaller features where I'm not worried about the consequences. Notice that slope is only maybe 30 feet long at most. It goes down. There's nothing for me to hit. There's no creeks for me to get buried in. And those are the kind of slopes where I can go essentially play with what I kind of jokingly call them baby tigers. I don't want to mess with the big tiger, but I might mess with a little tiger cub on a tiny slope like that. And that gives me a chance to see the avalanche problem of the day. In that case, it was a little wind swab, and it's what we've been dealing with a lot up here recently. And that gave us a ton of information, and basically was like, well, I'm not going anywhere near bigger terrain now, because I know we've got this wind loaded on similar style slopes and features.
So what about if you're a snowmobiler?
You asking me, Nick?
Do you want me?
I don't know.
Do you
I was
want me
just
to
throwing
answer
it
that
out there,
one?
Karl, or Tasha, go ahead. That'd be great.
Yeah, so we do the same thing. We'll use the sled on smaller test slopes, looking for shooting cracks, trying to basically the exact size slope that you were talking about, Dallas, and to see if we can get it to slide. So if we get things to slide, then we stay low. You know, we keep it a low in the trees day. We don't go up high. That's end of story when we see stuff like that.
Thanks, Tasha. Yeah, I'm an avid snowmobiler myself, and you definitely travel through terrain a lot differently. Snowmobiling can sometimes be adrenaline infused, the motor and the throttle and just the whole bit. It's easy to overlook some of these red flags and kind of zoom past them. And you can start out at the trailhead and get up to, on Shasta, you can go from 6,900 feet to 10,000 feet in about 10 minutes. And you're traveling through a lot of different elevation bands. Conditions are much different as you move up in elevation. And so it's easy to overlook the red flags, and you really got to just take the time to stop, pause, and kind of have these regroup moments as you move up through the terrain and assess what you're seeing. Get off your sled or just use your snowmobile to ride across these small test slopes. And one thing that's cool about snowmobiling is on those those high danger days, you can still have a lot of fun in low angle terrain, boondocking through the forest.
And I'll just add too, I'll add too, when you're on a snow machine, like you're covering, like you said, you're covering a lot of ground, right? So that's a disadvantage in that you might miss stuff because you're traveling by it so fast, but that's an advantage because you can see so much terrain over a short period of time that if you really keep your eyes open, you can see a lot more terrain than typically someone who's out backcountry skiing. They're maybe staying in one small basin, whereas on a machine, you're going basin to basin to basin. And if you keep your eyes open and there's some instability, you're probably going to get one of these obvious signs where you might not get it if you're looking at a smaller piece of terrain.
Yeah, and even as a skier, talk to the sledders. They see way more terrain. And so I'm always talking to those guys, what'd you see out there? And a lot of times they'll see one red flag.
Yeah, maintaining the group too is another really difficult thing when you're snowmobiling, because it is so dynamic, and knowing where your whole crew is sometimes can be quite difficult to manage out there. So having a good solid crew and knowing where everyone is and having a strong plan and sticking to it is very important when you're on the snowmobile.
Yeah, so important. I mean, yeah, you get separated easily and someone gets buried in an avalanche. How long do you have to dig someone up? Somebody say it.
10 minutes.
10 minutes. That's not very long. So say you spend 5 minutes looking for your buddy, just highlighting the importance of sticking together, keeping an eye on each other. Radios, a lot of the newer snowmobiles or snow bikes have computers that are GPS and they link up and you can see where your friends are. Use that stuff. Technology works when it works.
Ooh, we got a really good question here in the chat that I think is probably relevant to some folks here. What do you do if you find yourself, if you find out too late or you notice too late that you are on a slope with avalanche danger? We going up, we going down?
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to mind is what are the consequences if this slides? You know, do we, you know, are there terrain traps or trees or cliffs, or is it a nice run out if we choose to decide that to ski it?
I think if you're trying to avoid avalanche terrain and you suddenly find yourself in avalanche terrain, the best thing you can do is get off of that terrain as soon as you can. Now, you know, that's really going to depend on the exact slope that you're on. But if you're trying to avoid avalanche terrain, and that's again where we come back to what someone was saying earlier about how important terrain is. I think Nick was talking about it. You know, it's so key to know what is and what is not avalanche terrain, because then you can pick whether or not you're exposed to avalanches on that particular day, and then being super, super careful about that. And what we find is that, you know, the best way to figure out whether or not you're in avalanche terrain is actually measuring slope angles. So, you know, typically your smartphone will have an app that'll allow you to measure slope angles, but, you know, anything steeper than 30 degrees or underneath a slope steeper than 30 degrees is avalanche terrain. And that's where you got to really be careful that if you're going into that terrain, it's a conscious choice, that you've made the assessment that today is a day when you feel comfortable exposing yourself to that terrain. And you don't want to just wander in there willy-nilly and not be sure what you're getting into.
And I think too, in addition to that as well, is if you do find yourself in a precarious situation there, understanding and utilizing safe travel practices. So really maintaining that one person at a time on a questionable slope. And then I think Tasha mentioned like really maintaining that group and like keeping everybody together when appropriate, spacing out when appropriate, depending on the conditions and the terrain that you're in.
I think another thing too that's really important, especially on the motorized end, is we teach people to look at vegetation clues, because all of a sudden you're in a zone and you have little trees or trees with uphill branches broken. You know, you got to get out of there. It's just not a good zone. So, you know, vegetation offers a lot for us as snowmobilers and as skiers. You just get into it faster on the snowmobile.
I don't know if you guys are familiar with the slope angle shading on maps. A lot of applications on phones have that layer that you can activate, and it will color the map wherever you're going. It'll color it according to slope angle, and you'll see orange as, you know, 30-ish, 35-degree slopes. And then as you start to get 35, 36, or 7, all the way up to 40, it'll turn red. And that's a really great way, especially if you're going into new terrain, to visualize where avalanche terrain is.
One thing I'll just add about those apps is that, you know, just remember that the accuracy of their slope angle measurements relate to just how good the data that they use to make those maps is. And so with some sort of standard, they call them digital elevation maps or digital elevation models. With some of those, they're dispersed widely enough that your slope angles might be plus or minus 4 degrees. Now that sounds like it's pretty good, but the difference between being on a 29-degree slope and a 33-degree slope is like night and day. And the difference between being on a 33-degree slope and a 37-degree slope is again night and day, because 37 is like, you know, right in the bullseye for avalanches. So you do want to understand, you know, where the data is coming from for your particular map. The maps are great for planning and for seeing the general patterns. But again, like nothing actually beats a field measurement if you can do that.
Now this brings up, we've got some both questions and some answers going on here in the chat here, but for the folks presenting here, any favorite apps or resources, particularly paid ones? I know that you know, you guys are this is your livelihood, so you're probably willing to pay the money for paid apps, I would imagine. But are there any particularly good ones that you know of that folks can access without having to?
You know, the ones that have been mentioned here are great. CalTopo, Gaia, those are both excellent resources. There's a lot of really good mapping resources out there, but you know, I think they're great at helping us anticipate where avalanche terrain may be. But again, I'm really with Karl, like you just can't beat field measurements. And so, you know, I really encourage all of my partners to do stuff like this, is to not necessarily see if you can always just guess the slope angle. But what I'll actually encourage people to do is like, find some of your favorite terrain, measure that slope angle and get a ballpark. And so instead of being like, oh, I think that slope in front of me is 35, I'm like, that slope in front of me looks a lot like Ramsey's run. And I know Ramsey's is 35 degrees. So I bet that thing is pretty dang close to 35 degrees. That way, I'm not necessarily every single time, I've got some benchmarks and I'm looking kind of comparing two pieces of terrain to each other, rather than always trying to pull a number out of my head. And because probably I'm just guessing. But if I'm comparing what I know that slope looks like, and I know that, you know, Ramsey's is 35 degrees, I'm probably going to be pretty close to that. Terrain is really the fun part about avalanches to me. I think learning how to manage terrain and getting to move around in the mountains, like Karl said earlier too, you know, we're not telling people don't ever go into avalanche terrain. In fact, we oftentimes are encouraging people like, yeah, you can have a lot of fun in avalanche terrain. We just want you to go there intentionally. And we want you to choose those days when you go and when you expose yourself to that avalanche terrain, rather than just accidentally finding yourself there. I think sometimes people can look at the avalanche forecasters and they're like, oh, it's telling me to not go somewhere. But really what we're trying to do is help you understand when are those days that we can go expose ourselves to avalanche terrain, and when are those days that we need to get really far away from it. Because when we, you know, even when we have high avalanche danger out, if you have a good keen eye, those avalanches are going to occur in places where avalanches start, run, and stop. And if you're away from that, boondocking in the trees on your sled, you can have a really good day in the mountains, snowshoeing, having a nice walk out on a flat meadow. You can have a lot of fun in the mountains. But you've got to make sure that you understand what avalanche terrain actually looks like.
I think there's nothing more heartbreaking than when I've investigated different avalanche accidents and the members of the victims party have said, we didn't know that we were in avalanche terrain, you know, because it is sort of the first skill you want to pick up. You want to know where that avalanche terrain is. You want to know how steep those slopes are, because you can go out and on, you know, 98% of the days, if the steepest part of that slope is 28 degrees, you can ski, you can sled, you know, but boy, you tip that thing up to 30, 31, 32 degrees, and it's gonna, you know, there's going to be a lot higher probability of it sliding, and you get up to 37 and there's a, you know, and that's the kind of the bullseye. So you're just talking about a few degrees. And it's really important to try and understand that and to figure that piece out. And in a lot of ways, it's a lot simpler than digging a snow pit and trying to assess the different layers and all that, because you're just making simple slope angle measurements, trying to see whether or not there's trees that are disturbed there, trying to see how open the terrain is, that kind of thing. So yeah, I can't emphasize that one enough. We probably beat it up enough, but I think it deserves it.
Yeah. Next red flag.
Sure.
So the next red flag in no particular order, I guess, is heavy snowfall. And so first question that might pop to mind is, well, what's heavy snowfall? And perhaps you guys can speak to what you consider heavy snowfall, but at least just off the cuff for me, it's you know what I'm talking about. It's dumping out, at least out here, big fat flakes, an inch or two per hour, a foot or more over, the daylight hours. It's just dumping. It's a whiteout, snowing and blowing. And a good analogy that my former Eric White used to always teach at classes was, think about the weightlifter. You have a weightlifter and he's got a bar on his shoulders, and you put 5 pounds and 5 pounds and 5 pounds and 5 pounds, and he can slowly adjust and get his balance, widen his stance, widen his grip, and adjust to that load as it gets put on his shoulders. You take all that, whatever, 350 pounds, and you just drop it on his shoulders, that weightlifter is going to crumple to the ground. And it's kind of similar with snow. The snowpack doesn't like rapid change. It takes time to adjust, and we need to give it time to settle out before we hit the steep and deep. So the third red flag here, heavy snow. Anything else to add to that, guys?
Yeah, no, I think you hit it, Nick. It's really about not just the amount of precipitation you get, but over what period of time. So if that, and we call that, we typically call that the precipitation intensity. And but it's those two things, how much load did you put on the snowpack and how quickly did you do that? Because the faster you put that load on the snowpack, the more unstable the conditions will be, because it won't have that time to adjust.
I just like to note that this red flag is also the one that typically keys me up to want to go outside and play, right? Like, I'm like, whoa, it's going to be dumping out there. It's going to be a deep powder day. Like, these are often, that's almost like immediately, like when I hear myself saying that, I'm like, oh, I probably had rapid loading. Because if it's going to be that good of a day, we probably just got one of those nice big coastal storms here. And, whatever, we got 40 inches in the last 2.5 days. And, that's rapid loading, however you want to look at it. And so that's kind of, indeed, we had avalanche warnings out with that. So that makes a lot of sense, corresponds. But that red flag is a huge one, but it's also one that kind of draws me out.
And just a plug to avalanche centers, you guys, these centers, they've got weather stations, they've got the forecast. They're telling you this stuff before you even get out into the field. So you can observe these things on your own, but like I was mentioning before, you can get an idea of what to expect out there before you even get skis on your feet or sit on your snowmobile. We've got snow depth sensors in our area that just they get utilized all the time by locals, and when they're not working, we find out fast because people love looking at that snow depth and how much snow fell overnight.
I actually remember a rapid loading event that I got to ski with Karl Birkeland, actually there in his backyard. We got up, we looked at all those snow depth sensors one morning, and they all said like 4 inches. The ones there at Big Sky and at Yellowstone Club and Bridger, I think, had 2 inches. And we went out to Beehive Basin, and Karl, we pried him out of the office and he joined us, and we got out there and found 30 inches of snow. That storm had just parked over this base, not a weather station in the thing. And so we didn't go out there expecting that red flag. And as soon as we stepped foot out of the parking lot, we immediately had to dial back our plan. We're like, there was way too much snow overnight and we need to just keep it super simple today. But we still had some really fun meadow skipping and just absolutely beautiful cold smoke, Montana 3% snow.
So one of the things I've heard Karl say before is one of the best things you can have, best traits in a partner and in yourself when you're skiing, snowmobiling, is to be flexible. So you might read the snow depth sensor, you read the forecast, you've got this idea of what to expect. You get out there and it's different. So being flexible is a really important skill to have to stay safe, make good decisions.
Yep. You just always have to be updating your plan as you go, because you just never know what's going to come up, right? You're thinking you're going to go for this big objective, and then maybe you see wind blowing off the top of the ridges and you're like, okay, I'm going to go to this smaller objective. And then, you know, you're walking across somewhere and you get a shooting crack and you're like, oh, I'm going to go to this low angle thing, but it's almost 30 degrees. And then you get a big woof and you're like, you know, maybe today I'll just go touring on the flats or find a slope that's 25 degrees or whatever, you know, but you need to always be able to update things as you go.
Any questions or comments about heavy snow or, you know?
There's your heavy snow.
Ah, wait, I got one of those too. No,
That
was
might
today,
have been from this
right?
morning. That was today.
Ah, that looked pretty good.
It helps when you drop a knee, though. So. Sorry, gratuitous powder photos. You know, the reality is we all do this because it's really fun, right? And I think we always got to keep that in mind. We all love to play in the mountains. Snow is fun, however you choose to move on it, and that's why we're out here. So,
yeah.
So maybe we can move on to another red flag. I'll just shout it out here, and that is wind. Mount Shasta is no stranger to wind. And let's see here, share a few photos. You guys got that all right?
Yep.
So here's Avalanche Gulch, looking up Red Banks here, and we get a lot of northwesterly wind, and you can see it spooling off the ridges here, loading all on this kind of southeasterly aspect along Castle Ridge. And you know, I think a key point with wind is snow does not have to be falling from the sky for there to be avalanche danger. It's a blue sky day, you know, and this could be a considerable or even high day potentially with that amount of wind loading. Wind is extremely good at transporting snow, moving it around, and it should not be underestimated. Another photo here. So you'll notice a lot of times snow surfaces becoming scoured or just wind sculpted. So Strugi, these big wind features. And how can we tell what way the wind was blowing by looking at these wind features? Was the wind blowing from right to left or left to right in this photo? So the wind was blowing from right to left, and the way you can tell is these kind of vertical faces will always be facing into the wind. So when we talk about the wind, we always talk about what direction it's blowing from. So a northwest wind is coming out of the northwest, and you'll get these kind of vertical faces, and then it'll extend out downwind, whichever way it's going. So wind is a pretty easy one to usually see. You know, you'll see wind blowing snow. Sometimes you can get some pretty radical features, and we'll get sastrugi, you know, or wind sculpted features like this on Shasta that can be, you know, 2, 3, 4 feet tall, and it's a good indicator that the wind was blowing. One other I wanted to add is, you know, maybe you're below tree line and you're not into dangerous terrain yet, but if there's a lot of tree debris on the ground, another good indicator that the wind was blowing.
This is a really another good example too of utilizing those weather stations when available, because at least I know the ones that we have, it'll tell you that wind direction for the past X amount of time. And if you look at it and it's been coming the same direction the last 24 hours, it should give you a good idea of what to expect out there. And then, like all of these red flags, we're using them to compare to what we were expecting, and then can then change our plans accordingly. We did have a question in here in the chat as well about wind slab. I believe it's wind slab versus storm slab, I think is kind of the question here. Now, do wind slabs behave differently? Are there different triggers for them? Are they consolidating at different rates? And what I would say to start, I'm sure other folks have things to jump in there, but I would say that they can be a little bit more unexpected sometimes because of the way that the wind can pile up so much snow. If you only had what seemed like 6 inches fall out of the sky in a wind protected area that got all the wind piling up, you might have 5 times that amount. So what seemed like a moderate amount of snow can actually behave like heavy snowfall, but in a more isolated area.
The other thing that happens with wind slabs is that, as the wind blows the snow, it breaks it into smaller particles. And then when it blows up, say over a ridge or a breakover or whatever else, those smaller particles can pack more tightly together than just the loose snow falling out of the sky. And so you can build not only more snow, but that snow is denser and more cohesive. And so it creates really sensitive slab material. And depending on, what kind of weak layer it's deposited on top of, then it can be a problem for a while.
The Eastern Sierra Avalanche Center posted a good little image on Instagram a little bit ago, and it showed a soft slab where, say, a skier triggers a soft slab. A lot of times you can trigger it right from your feet and it slides below you, whereas sometimes on a hard slab or like a hard wind slab, you can trigger it from on the slab itself, and so and off you go on the slab, and you don't have as good a chance of getting off it or just letting the slab slide beneath you as you would on a softer slab.
I have a couple of wind pictures here.
This is the one. I'll just share this real quick, Karl. This is the one I was thinking about here.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. So yeah, hard slab. So like a hard wind slab, sometimes it'll just pop without warning and you can get caught on the slab, or sometimes soft slabs tend to break at your feet. Go ahead.
No, that's a really good point. Let's see if we can. So this is just, obviously we've got wind loading going on. Otherwise, it's a sunny day. This picture just demonstrates what happens when the wind blows. I mean, obviously here the wind is blowing from left to right. And on the right-hand side, we've got hardly any snow. And on the left-hand side, we have huge drifts. And this is exactly what's going on mountain ridges. If you cut the ridge in half and could look at it, and this is another picture. In this picture, this is a ridge line and the wind was blowing from left to right. And you can see areas where there's no snow at all. And one of the things I always tell people is if you're in the mountains and you know that the snowpack there is about 6 feet deep and you see an area with no snow, then the next question you need to ask yourself is, where did the snow go? And so, in this case, everything's getting blown here from the left side over to the right side. Another example, you can see this avalanche kind of in the middle of the photo, and you can see this broad area of the side of this mountain that's just rock. And so you come across that rock. Well, where is that snow going? Well, it's all getting blown over this breakover and deposited right there. Another example, you're out on a tour and all of a sudden all the snow's gone. And sure enough, you come over the edge and we've got a nice fracture line, and that's where all the snow went, to this avalanche. So again, you know, a couple more quick pictures. Here's one. This was actually a side country avalanche near Bridger Bowl about 10 years ago. And believe it or not, there was something like over 30 inches of new snow. And then the wind started blowing like crazy. And you can see it's a sunny day now, but the storm hasn't stopped. We had 30 inches of snow, but now this area is continuing to get loaded with all this windblown snow. And yet these people are walking up here to ski this out of bounds slope. And the end result was an enormous avalanche that luckily no one was caught in. Just by pure luck, no one was caught in that slide. And the last couple of pictures I'll show you are ones that I love to show in different avalanche classes. But this is just an example. This is, you know, in Alaska, everything's big. So this is a big Alaska avalanche. And this just shows how much snow can get deposited on a slope. So this fracture here, I'll show you a person standing at the bottom of that fracture line. So here's the person and here's the fracture. And so enormous avalanche triggered by a falling cornice. So the moral of the story here is just that, like we've said, you know, as far as these red flags, I mean, a really big one is wind. How much wind, which direction, and is there snow available for transport? And if the answer if there's snow available to transport, you had enough wind, you really need to know where that wind is depositing the snow, and then stay clear of those zones.
Yeah, you know, if you're moving through avalanche terrain, say you're on a big hut trip or on a big, whatever, overland expedition or anywhere, the windward side of a ridge can be safe terrain. You know, if you're in avalanche terrain and you saw some of those pictures Karl showed, that there's rock. So that can be a safe route through avalanche terrain, but, you know, 10 feet away could be a little dicey.
Excellent. Any more questions about specifically about wind and the snow transfer and the avalanche danger presented by it? Well, if you think of something, don't hold back. Feel free to pop it in the chat there. Now, before we jump on to the next red flag, I should note that the Nickolay Dodov Foundation is a nonprofit, and we are able to operate and provide a lot of free avalanche education thanks to some of our sponsors. So we'd like to recognize one of them real quickly here, and that is the Alpine County Tobacco-Free Tobacco Prevention Program, a big sponsor of the NDF, and they encourage everybody in the mountains to abstain from tobacco use. And as somebody who does like to climb mountains pretty slowly, I would also echo that sentiment and hope that others would choose to do the same.
So the last red flag of the night, we're just approaching 1 hour here, try not to go too long, but is rapid warming. And this one perhaps is not observed as often. It's typically a springtime related red flag, but not always. It definitely can occur in the wintertime. And the rapid warming, I'll show you a few photos. What ends up happening with these loose, wet flavor of avalanches is the surface layer of the snowpack is becoming cohesionless. It's not cohesive. It's losing strength. And you know, early signs of this avalanche problem are little roller balls, little pinwheels that you see on the snowpack. You see off to the side of this slide. And so what can happen is you can get a skier making one turn, or a piece of rock or rime ice falling off cliffs, and it hits the snow. And as it moves downhill, it starts to entrain more snow and gather snow with it as it gains momentum. And by the time it gets to the bottom, especially on a slope that has a long fetch, these things can get massive. And we've had a few big ones in, let's see here, get out of here, in Avalanche Gulch, where, you've got from Red Banks down to tree line is a couple miles, and you can get some pretty massive loose wet slides. Out of here. We had one on, there it is. We had one on Valentine's Day several years ago, and it came down through Avalanche Gulch proper and was loose wet in nature, and just almost created this like glaze on the snowpack as it moved down through the gully, and was pretty impressive. Other times you'll get these rain runnels, you get rain on snow events. That's been more common for us lately, where you'll get fresh snow and then it warms up and you get some rain. And usually the danger with the rain on snow events is immediately during that rain on snow. Once it does its thing and it freezes, then you're just kind of left with snow like this afterwards. But it's kind of that initial rain on snow where you need to be heads up. What else on rapid warming, loose wet stuff, guys?
Yeah, I think it's one to not be underestimated on that bluebird powder day immediately following the storm, when sun comes out and temperature's warm. And it can, again, I feel that draw to the mountains on that day, right? It's a beautiful day, and sometimes that's when we start to see a lot of these loose wet avalanches coming downhill. And especially if you're in these more coastal areas where our temperatures are sitting a little closer to freezing, that's a pretty classic one for us. And so just because the storm's done and the sun's out and the temperatures are warm, that's where we're sitting right now. And this time of year for us, we really start to worry about those post-storm day bluebird warm-ups. That's where that rapid warming can come back and bite us.
A lot of people ask, well, what should I do if I start seeing those roller balls or start seeing the surface of the snow to become, just loose and unconsolidated? And the easiest answer is move to a different aspect. You've got 4 aspects to choose from, and you can, hopefully move on to a shadier side of the mountain.
So we've got a question here in the chat, and this is an interesting one. Any concerns? This sounds like they might be asking specifically, but in May and or June for PCT hikers. And it's a couple parts of this one. One, don't know how fast you are, so I don't know exactly where you're going to be in May and June, depending on when you start. But absolutely. I mean, our area last year, we had big snowstorms here in May. And I think a lot of the Sierra was actually pretty snowed in. Many seasons, a lot of the Sierra can be snowed in still. So, similar to if you're going out for a day of touring or an extended trip, you want to pay attention to the current conditions as well as the expected weather. I know it's a little trickier when you're out there, but in advance, I would look at as you plan out each section of your hike, I would definitely find those relief maps that Nick was talking about. Find areas where you are crossing avalanche terrain. And then if you know that there is weather coming in the forecast, you might potentially have to kind of hole up in a safe zone while that passes, for instance, something like that.
Yeah, a couple things come to mind for me is route finding and slip and fall hazard. So trail disappears due to snow, you got to know where to go. The second thing is slip and fall hazard. So you're likely going to be in lightweight hikers. Snow in the morning in the springtime is usually smooth and firm and icy. So, micro spikes are great. A small, lightweight little ice axe is a really good idea. And knowing how to use that stuff. And then also knowing when self-arrest with an ice axe just might not even be possible at all. We get that on Shasta all the time, where I don't care how good you are with that ice axe. It's icy enough to where you're not going to be able to stop if you slip and fall. So assessing the slope, maybe finding a little bit alternative route, and getting creative with your path through a snowy, icy section.
River crossings as well on the PCT. I know, I believe there was a couple incidents, I think it was 2 seasons ago, but big snow year means big melt when it starts to go. And oftentimes that can accelerate. It becomes kind of an exponential process, and those rivers can really be raging. I know this, it's not avalanche related, but it's still really important to be paying attention to that, and just making sure that you're doing that safely. And just really paying attention to those rivers when they start filling up with all that snow melt.
So it says
Oh.
thinking about those May storms, how unstable is new snow that falls on dirt versus on snow? That's an interesting one. Karl, you spent much time looking at like that piece of the puzzle?
Yeah. You always have to cover up your anchors first before you're going to look at much avalanche activity. So if you got new snow falling on dirt, and if the depth of the new snow is such that it's not covering kind of the rocks and the bumps and the humps and everything, then you're going to have a lot harder time triggering an avalanche. But by the time you get that snow depth deep enough to bury those anchors, that's when the avalanche danger starts.
And we had kind of a follow-up from the PCT one, specifically about so this would be less to do with new snow as it is maybe just a large snowpack. As that temperature increases, are we seeing an increase in avalanche danger? And I would say this is maybe falls under one of those low probability, high consequence, where you're less likely to trigger it because the snowpack is probably fairly consolidated at that point. However, if you do, it could end up being a pretty big one.
Well, and what Nick said early in this, I thought really resonated for me, was that what's great with red flags is they work everywhere, and they actually work at all times of year, right? So these red flags, we're talking about things like rapid change. Remember, that's rapid change. It's been cold and stormy, and now the temperatures are warming up. It's not that it's been warm for multiple days in a row. So those rapid change things, these red flags are great because they can work with those really, we get storms in May and in June in the mountains, and you get them in November. And sometimes we have early winters where you can travel and play in October, and other times we're mountain biking all the way to Christmas. So, these red flags can work in any mountain range, and they can work at any time of year. And I think that's a really great part of how simple this is for us.
One more comment about, I don't know if this is kind of what that question's implying, but new snow on old snow. Just from experience and what I've observed, it seems like when a storm comes in warmer, it's snowing, but maybe it's, closer to 32 degrees, it tends to paste on the old snow better than if it's a colder storm, colder snow, lighter snow, doesn't stick to the old snow surface as well. So perhaps a colder storm, a little bit of wind, avalanche danger may be a little more dicey than a warmer and wetter storm in general. I don't know if you guys think that's true or not, but. More questions, team?
Well, this is not so much of a question, but just, gonna go with the obligatory ask here. I'm not going to tell you what you can do for less than the cost of a cup of coffee, but you know, again, the Nickolay Dodov is a nonprofit here. So if you like what they're putting out here and you want to be able to present more Avalanche knowledge to the youth, got a link in the chat here. You can throw it out there. My light-handed approach.
And if you guys don't all know, if you're looking for avalanche forecasts, avalanche.org is the one-stop shop. There's, you know, a map of the United States there, and you've got all the avalanche centers propagated on the map. Click and head on over to whatever center you think is nearest to you. And you know, if you're going to an area that doesn't have an avalanche forecast, definitely still click the forecast center closest to the zone you're heading and see what they have to say. Oftentimes conditions, avalanche problems, whatnot can be similar in an adjacent area. But yeah, avalanche.org. And if you're looking for further educational opportunities, there's a link on there as well with education options for you to pursue.
And I'll just send one more shout out to the Natalia and Alex and the Nick Dodov Foundation, and just say that, you know, this is a foundation that Alex and Natalia have really put their heart and soul into, and really proud to be associated with it. And they are providing an incredible amount of avalanche education, especially to youth, not only in California, but even in other areas of the world, even in you know, in Bulgaria and in South America, and they're just doing some really incredible work, all on a shoestring. You know, they really are. So if it's something that you're passionate about and want to share, you know, the idea of free avalanche education with youth, this is a great place to, great group to support.
Thank you so very much. Thank you to all of you for amazing presentation and such important topics. And thank you so much to be with you. Thank you, Karl and Casey and Dallas and Nick and Tasha. Thank you so much. And thank you to all these computers, everybody who joined us tonight and took up their time to learn, make us feeling a small part between great professionals and the public. And if we can have this, all of you learning tonight from such amazing speakers, make us feel so good. We are very thankful. We are very thankful. We encourage everybody to go to the mountain and enjoy and have much fun. And as Casey said, we work part with Alpine County non-smoking healthy program. We encourage healthy lifestyle. Eat good, don't smoke, move, and positive thoughts. This is what keeps us going. Thank you so much. We are speechless. Thank you. Thank you to all of you.
Yeah, I have to say the same thing. Yeah, the more we know, the safer we'll be out there. And it's always great to have such knowledgeable people with such experience to share all these topics that they can actually open up like another world to us. In our area, we have like a small community of backcountry skiers. Quite often people go, they take classes, but then they don't have the required experience to use their knowledge. So, and quite often, pretty soon they will forget what they have learned in the classes and the courses. So anytime you feel like, we always have like a big research practice, we have all these events on Zoom. We go to schools and other places, like even our ski and snowboard team. So feel free to join us and kind of refresh your knowledge. And then another thing, we have a great ski area and all the ski patrollers. If you feel like going out and you need to know more about what's going on with our snowpack, just visit them, give them some applause, because they do such a hard work for very little pay. and ask them what's going on with the snow. And we hope to have a safe mountain and a safe winter for everyone. And just, hey, go big, but be safe. To send it safe, educate yourself. This is what our motto is all about.
Yeah, you guys pay attention to red flags. You heard it from Karl. Avalanche accidents or people that survive accidents often say they ignore the red flags. If you learn one thing from tonight, pay attention to red flags each and every day.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Natalia and Alec, thanks you guys. You know, the support and passion and drive is unspeakable that you guys give out. It's incredible.
We cannot make one step without all of you. And no matter my many messy words, this is the absolute truth. And I have not enough words to say thank you for all of you to be with us and really make us part of, we are very passionate to organize and to be with you and everybody who come here to learn something, and very thankful. Really looking forward for backcountry adventure together with many of you.
Natalia, please don't, when you send us messages, please keep using all caps. I love it.
Me too.
I wish they have bigger. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank you, thank you. This was such a good learning conversation, and thank you so much.
And now we're waiting for more snow, and it's gonna be snowing for almost a week, and it's gonna be cold. So it's a good time to use those red flags. Keep those red flags in mind. What is going to happen? Hopefully no wind.
And at the end of the day, nobody ever had a bad time skiing low angle POW.
That's right, yeah.
Got that right.
Yes, we had many days even not taking our skis from the ski, just using, and still magical days just to be in the mountain. We are very fortunate and given so much, all of us, that we can play in the mountains, and especially we live here. This is such a privilege. I don't know why we deserve it, but we truly enjoy it. Very thankful for the mountain. We like good ski days when we make good turns, but as Casey said, any day in the mountain, even if we don't take our skis because the snow is unskiable, still good day. And chocolates, we always bring chocolates. Big pockets with a lot of chocolates.
Sweet.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you.
Natalia and Alex, do you guys have more events this year, or?
Oh yes.
We have 2 beacon searches here in Bear Valley, and we are organizing more. This is our less event years because of our very hard fall, losing our dog.
It's not just because of the fall, but last year we did so much, and this year after the COVID era, all the ski and snowboard teams, they're so busy with going races so they can be together. And every time we kind of reach out, and we have kind of a little hard time to get these guys involved. So we see, we're hoping that we can do a lot more this year. So let's hope, but at least we have these 2 like workshops. We have the boot camp. It's a snowboard camp. Some of the pros, they're throwing some programs with future pros. So we're gonna have some avalanche talk with these guys, and then our snowboard teams. And we, as I said, everyone is welcome to come and practice with the beacons. We always kind of cut some snow profiles. We talk again about the red flags. We talk about the obvious the terrain traps. So it's kind of a place like you show up and you're gonna have a good time. We're gonna have a chat and then the practice. We can make it to be intense. We can even play the 3 beacon, multiple burial. So we're gonna organize more. We have been talking, with Natalia, how we can get everybody to stay more busy so they can continue helping us with the foundation. Yeah. Because without the core of such a people like you, it will be really hard to do the work. Last year was amazing year. Like we did, like even the whole summer was like busy.
Until October, Casey helped us. So I believe in the fall, we had with Casey 2 events to Argentina and Australia. So we had 3 events for last winter. We finished the beginning of October. So we hope maybe we'll have more events, March, April, and then we'll keep going because I receive messages from New Zealand now and all over the world, and it's really good feeling.
Well, see, last year you reached so many people that there weren't that many left. So they all needed a year off, and then next year you'll be back to, nonstop again.
We had such amazing experience. We are so thankful for Casey, and like was our last presentation was to Argentinian team, and they were so much engaged, even though we had to translate because it was really full room of kids and coaches and parents, and just the energy of learning. And we always have gifts, awards. We give something, we encourage them to learn and answer questions, to receive, to make it fun.
Yeah, thank you very much to some of our sponsors like the Firewall company, the BCA
for
the gear, and the Schwartz to give away.
All our friends from Bear Valley, mostly our foundation is moving forward with donations of our closest friends here. We have nothing fancy, but a lot of passion and people like you with love. So we believe with love, we'll still keep moving and moving mountains and bringing knowledge to people to play on the mountain.
With the hope to keep everybody safe. I mean, we know it's hard. Everybody's got different agenda and everybody wants to go for the big prize. But the truth is, like, the more you know, the better choices you're gonna make, and you're gonna become a better, safer backcountry user.
Yeah.
One important thing is that we all go out, and some days we ski on the top of each other, and we have to be careful. The same with the snowmobilers. They like to go this high marking stuff, and you see like a whole group of snowmobilers, and one guy is like, "Oh, I'm just gonna hit that slope and just show up in front of everybody," and then here you go, the big slide comes down. We had some big slides like after the atmospheric river. The whole kind of almost like 1200 vertical came down. It broke from pretty much area longer than 800 yards, and it came down in a big pile in the creek. And like the other day we were skiing and we see one of our friends, and we kind of like, oh, we're not going to ski because he's not going to soften up. And then at the bottom we were waiting for him because we wanted to see how he will finish the run. And then he shared that, oh, I haven't seen this slope sliding, and we were like, oh, you better believe it, it slides big. Like going back in 2011, there were a group of people after a big storm, like almost 5 feet of snow. They went out, and of course, hoping that they're gonna ski the best. But then, luckily for them, the propagation was like 6 feet away from the first skier, and there was like one thing, like from that point, like everybody were like, oh, that mountain can slide. Of course, anything can slide that is steeper than 30 degrees.
Hey, I'm gonna have to take off now. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
That was wonderful, and let's do it again.
Yes, thank
Sounds
you,
good.
thank you, thank you. We hope to ski together soon. Thank you.
Yes, me too.
Thank you,
Alright.
thank you, Karl. Thank
you,
you
Karl.
so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
All the best to your family, Karl. Thank you.
Oh, to Ginger, the girls, thank you. Oh, thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Davos and Nick and Casey and Tasha. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, guys.
Thanks for having me join. It was great to see you.
Laptop.
Yeah, thanks for chiming in, Tasha.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
anytime.
Natalia, somebody wants
I
to
gotta
say hey
actually
to you. Edie, come, laptop, come.
I gotta jump to a strategic planning meeting now for the Avalanche Center. So I gotta one Zoom
Thank
to
you.
another. But great seeing you guys.
No, Tasha.
See you soon.
What
Thank
is
you,
his
Tasha.
name?
Dallas.
What is-
This is Edie.
Oh,
There's Van.
She thinks she's a lap dog, but she's a 60-pound lab. So
oh, shit.
He's
Thank you.
sleeping, which is like, oh, that's
Ben, he doesn't like to laugh that much.
fantastic.
Come in there.
Our puppy is sleeping. She has never slept outside. I didn't think we can be here like this. I thought one of us will be running, but I guess
She's taking a nap.
we had longer bucket.
Here's Larry.
Oh,
Larry.
Larry is there.
Larry.
How is he doing? Is he getting better? With
He is. He's definitely getting better. He's lost most of his limp. Comes back every once in a while, but he's good.
That's good.
Oh, we are like, yeah, our dogs
Are you guys
know,
working
our
tomorrow or are you playing tomorrow?
Work.
Work.
Back to the coal mines.
yeah.
Start on our moving thing, summer it's everyday work, every day. I mean, once the snow, and then winter is more going to the backcountry.
But we have some friends that we take to the backcountry, so
Some
it has
kids,
been kind of busy for us to.
yeah,
Pretty much every weekend there'll be people like asking, "Oh, can you take us out?" And so,
yeah. We go out with a lot of kids. We went with a magical kid today, and hopefully in the next days we'll have more. Maybe some of the kids are here, which is really good feeling to have kids with us going to the backcountry.
I gotta pop off as well, so I think it's gonna stop the recording here. But
okay.
Thank
it's
you.
been lovely. Wonderful to see everybody.
Good to see y'all. Y'all have a great one.
All right. We'll see you guys.
These days,
Bye.
we get together and ski and cook for all of you.
We're
Yeah.
going to send you something for
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
our appreciation to you. So
Heck
We
yeah.
can never say thank you enough.
Appreciate you guys.
we're yeah,
We love you.
we'll reach out back
You are our family,
and looking forward, like it's